Hi Wild Things, as promised, I am back to talk in depth about the marketing surrounding Fletcher's bodies of work, because obviously in a lot of my videos I do make mention of marketing strategies and marketing schemes, and to this day I haven't fleshed everything out properly in terms of the path that I went down, in terms of like doing some research into what the kind of marketing ethos is of her current label that she's signed to, and some things that have come out surrounding that marketing strategy. And then obviously, unpacking the Becky So Hot marketing and figuring out what I think is, real and maybe fudged a little bit for the sake of making money. And then, what I was able to unpack in terms of, the Finding Rewilding in Search of Antidote marketing strategies, and how those strategies evolve, like what they began as, which I have kind of briefly mentioned in the second video on my channel in this like Fletchy series. But yeah, I wanted to go into more detail about how I kind of came to the conclusion that there was a scheme at large, and what I have been able to deduce about how those schemes changed as the situation changed, and as Carrie negotiated her way out of her current contract, and what that meant for like marketing and the changes that were made, and in light of obviously a different trajectory. So I wanted to make a video kind of going over like the whole thing in one place and going into much more detail than I have in the past, because obviously I've made mention of things here and there. But I wanted to put it all in one place and put it all kind of like in a bit of a chronological order in terms of like, what I was able to unpack from the history, and then, what I was able to deduce from, like my own personal experience in the situation, and where there's been kind of evidence of scheming, and evidence of, some things being fudged, some details being left out or kind of changed for the purposes of, obviously making money. And so that's what this video is going to be. It's going to be a deep dive into like all things marketing, so that, hopefully, this whole situation, the whole Finding Rewilding situation, makes a lot more sense. Because the reality is, I think for the most part, the Venn diagram of people who don't believe in finding rewilding and people who maybe aren't practicing some media literacy skills when they're consuming content from an artist that's signed to a multi-million-dollar record label that has a vested interest in making money and is therefore likely going to leverage their legally binding contracts that are worth hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, to dictate what kind of content gets pushed out in order to generate the best return on investment, is basically a circle. Like, I think, people who aren't believing in finding rewilding and people who aren't maybe practicing some media literacy skills is basically a circle at this point. And, that's not to ignore the fact that some people just hear bits and pieces from unreliable sources and people who aren't involved and therefore wouldn't have a clue what's going on. Like, ignoring like that those people obviously exist that hear like a rumor and run with it. But I think for the most part, for the majority of people that aren't believing in finding rewilding right now, it's like a media literacy skills issue, which is what I hope this video helps with. I hope this helps with, unpacking what these like companies are doing, just purely based on what ends up on the internet. Like, I'm sure shit that's going on behind closed doors is much, much, much worse, but unpacking what ends up on the internet, what ends up, publicly available, that, shows where these multi-million-dollar companies' interests truly lie. And then, just like unpacking it all. Because obviously it's one thing to consume the content that artists are putting out into the world, at face value, just like consuming their content because, you enjoy them as a person, which, is kind of the point. Like, these multi-million-dollar record labels sign very genuine, pure souls that are very, likable, believable, and have a general good energy for a reason, because they make excellent front guys for what's going on behind closed doors. Let's be real. But it's a totally different thing to consume like artists' content, knowing that, you know, there are powers involved in the situation that have certain motivations and, you know, are looking for certain outcomes and like care about some things more than other things. And, you know, maybe those priorities like might not be overly ethical, and, you know, consuming the content with like that big picture in mind is totally different. And, you know, that's what I'm hoping to achieve in this video, is really thinking about that big picture of like, you know, the world that we live in, and like who are the powers that be in the situation. So in this video, we're really going to be focusing on that like big picture bird's eye view and thinking about like who all the players are, what's everyone's motivations, why things might have gone certain ways, what evidence there is that, you know, certain tactics have been used in the past, and what evidence there is that the same tactics are being used again. And yeah, like really think about it from like a big picture perspective. And we're basically going to be doing that, just like following my trajectory of like me unpacking this myself. Because, you know, like I'm not sitting here being like, you know, I'm so media literate. Like there were things that, you know, were kind of like setting off my spidey senses early on. Like, for example, with the Becky So Hot marketing, there was a few things where I was like, this is kind of not adding up. But obviously at the time, like I had no reason to like think much more deeply about it because it was not affecting my personal life. I had absolutely no reason to unpack it more than that. So like, you know, while, you know, some things were kind of like setting off my spidey senses in terms of like, this feels like a little bit kind of like fudged and fake. At the same time, like it was just like, it's not affecting my life, so who am I to care? Until it was affecting my life. And then I cared a lot. And then I did a lot of research and became a lot more media literate because I was dragged through it against my will. And so, you know, I had to like, you know, kind of learn on the go and unpack some stuff. And, you know, it turns out that a lot of my kind of intuitions about the situation were correct. Yeah, that's what this video is going to be. We're going to be basically following my trajectory of like unpacking everything and, you know, essentially just following my experience in the situation as a completely normal person that's been like dragged into it against her will and like, you know, obviously not been filled in a lot of things, but, you know, was able to fill myself in based on, you know, stuff that has ended up online from past situations, and then also little hints and clues that Carrie's left about, you know, the situation. So yeah, that's going to be today's video. So if you want to come on the journey that I've been on since getting dragged into this, in terms of like unpacking like what's really going on behind the scenes with a lot of, you know, these companies, let's get into the video. So the vital backstory of how I came to be in my Nancy Drew era, deciphering the marketing strategies of multi-million-dollar companies that are pushing a particular body of work in order to get a good return on investment, is that around the time of her Girl of My Dreams album release, about a week before the album release, Carrie followed me on TikTok and DM'd me. And she asked me, you know, not to say what it was that she DM'd me about. And so I'm going to honor that because she's never explicitly told me that that request is void. And so I'm going to assume it still stands. But the crux of the situation was she was DMing me about something in particular. There was something in particular that she wanted to talk about. And so, you know, we back and forth for a little bit a week before the album came out about this thing that she DM'd me about. And I really didn't think that much of the conversation, to be honest. Like, I was just like, okay, we're mutuals on TikTok now. And, you know, like she DM'd me about this thing. But, you know, like I didn't think a whole lot of it. Like obviously at the time I had a crush on her, but I didn't think a whole lot of it. I really did not think anything would eventuate from it. But then I did post a couple of TikToks, because, you know, she started like subtly posting things that I'm like, I feel like it seems like she's posting stuff that she thinks I would like, you know what I'm saying? And I was like, this is weird because, you know, like I really didn't think anything of her DMing me and following me. But then she started posting some kind of like stuff that was like, seems like she's trying to, you know, impress me or like get my attention or like post specifically about things that she knows I would like. And so then I started making TikToks about the stuff that she was posting. And this only went on for like a week up until the Girl of My Dreams release. We're kind of like back and forthing every day. And then I kind of like died off a little bit. Like I wasn't really, doing anything to encourage it anymore because I was like, well, she knows where I am. She can DM me. Like she can ask me out to dinner if she really wants to. Like she knows where I am. Like I really was just like, okay, balls in her court. And like by the time Girl of My Dreams released, I was like, okay, if she wants to do something about this kind of like flirty vibe that we've started, she will. So after that, I go back to business as usual. I'm just like posting whatever I want to post and I've like kind of let it go. But like I'm noticing things that she's posting and I'm like kind of thinking to myself, this kind of feels like a subtle kind of reference to things that I've posted or like subtly posting things that I think she might think that I would like. And so, like after about a month of this goes by, I'm like, I'm really getting the feeling that this girlie likes me back. You know what I'm saying? Like at this point, I was like, I definitely have a little crush on her. But like after a month, I was like, I'm pretty sure she has a little crush on me too. Like I was pretty sure after the first couple of interactions, I'm not going to lie. But when she kept going for like a month after, I'd given it a rest, I was like, pretty sure this girlie likes me. And so what I decided to do was I decided to make a YouTube video basically owning the fact that I liked her and just basically talking about kind of where I was at and what I was seeing. And, like at the time I was like pretty sure she liked me and that it was what I thought it was. But I was just like, I'm just going to put it out there and just see what happens and just own that, I definitely have a little crush on her. And so anyway, that happens. I make a video like of the month long of stuff that I'd seen or like the highlights of the month long of things that I'd seen her like subtly post. And yeah, just talked about, where I was at and what I was thinking. And yeah, basically that I had a big lesbian crush on her and, like that was kind of the vibe of the video. You can go back and watch it if you want to know exactly what I said. But God, I was like an actual child. Like looking back, I'm like, I had no idea what the fuck was in store for me when I made that video for sure. But anyway, then the next day she makes a TikTok using a sound that I was quoting in the original video about having a lesbian crush on someone. And she'd also used a filter called Subtle, which, I'd obviously talked about all the subtle ways that she was like, making videos to back and forth with me. And so as soon as I saw that video, I was like, okay, I was right about everything. She does have a little crush on me, just like I thought. And she was doing all those things subtly to try and get my attention. And so then that basically starts another, I think like at least 6 weeks to 2 months of us back and forthing every single day like we did at the very, very, very start. But I'm going to be real with you, just a couple of weeks into that, after, we'd gotten back into this rhythm of me making a post usually at night before I went to sleep and then her responding within a couple of hours, like subtly referencing whatever it was that I posted. Then, yeah, like I started to get the vibe that there was something else going on. And, like at the time, like I had a little spidey sense that it had something to do with the marketing that I'd witnessed personally in the Becky So Hot era. And at the time, I could also vaguely remember something happening with another artist that was signed to the same label that I knew that Fletcher was signed to. And so, I decided to do a little bit of digging. I was like, I'm going to go find out what the situation was with that artist and see if I can connect some dots between what happened there, what happened with the Becky So Hot situation, and what seems to be happening right now with Carrie and I in terms of like, us literally flirting every single day and getting really attached to each other, but, her not kind of doing anything about it.
The Halsey Situation.
So the very first thing I looked into was the situation between Halsey and Capitol Records because I could remember something kicking off with them about 6 months before, like I was starting to do a little digging. And I just found a whole bunch of stuff, to be honest. I think the very first thing I found was this article by Daily Mail that is titled Halsey Blasts Capitol Records for Demanding a Fake Viral Moment on TikTok Before Releasing a New Song. And I'll insert the TikToks associated with this article into this video so you can see exactly what Halsey was saying. But I strongly recommend going and reading this whole article that talks about, where the conflict started.
Basically, I have a song that I love and want to release ASAP, but my record label won't let me. I've been in this industry for 8 years and I've sold over 165 million records. And my record label is saying that I can't release the song unless they can fake a viral moment on TikTok. Everything is marketing. And they are doing this to basically every artist these days. I just want to release Music Man, and I deserve better, to be honest. I'm tired.
Put that out. The song title, because it would be Halsey So Good, and they would get the art on TikTok. If you're okay with those things but not announcing the date, then I think that we put that up honestly, I think we put that up sometime between Monday and Wednesday whenever they can get the artwork ingested. What?
I just hate this.
Oh, I know. I hate it.
It sucks.
Honestly.
Ironically, those TikToks went super viral and I just felt like that was a sweet slice of karma. You know what I'm saying? Because if you want to run your business on a marketing at all cost ethos, even to the detriment of your artists, because they're the ones putting their integrity on the line in order to lie and scheme and create these fake viral TikTok moments that they could very easily be caught out in, therefore damaging their entire brand and the longevity of their career, all so that you can make a few extra dollars. And then, an artist decides that instead of doing that, instead of putting her integrity on the line and lying for you and concocting a fake viral situation that's really not real, instead she decides to tell the truth and goes viral for telling the truth. I just feel like that's karma, you know what I'm saying? And a little bit proof that you don't know what you're doing, you know what I'm saying? Because, things go viral for a reason. I know you can get things to go kind of viral with some shock value, and I'm not saying that these tactics that these multi-million-dollar companies use never work, because they do work. But at the end of the day, it's the true stuff that goes mega viral, that does really, really, really well, because for the most part, I think people can suss the vibe. You know what I'm saying? Not always, even with the Halsey situation, a lot of people accused her of lying. She had to get on Instagram and be like, why the friggity frack would I lie? Which, relatable, girly. I wonder what that's like to have people call you a liar just for trying to tell the truth and trying to expose what these multi-million-dollar companies are doing behind closed doors. Because, it's really not the vibe. I wonder what that's like. It's not like I have any first-hand experience of that. Anyway, yeah, I think for the most part, even though there's going to be some people that are just so in denial and just cannot comprehend that capitalism be capitalisming, and these multi-million-dollar companies are more slutty for a dollar than any person you meet on the street. I think for the most part, people suss the vibe and they know what's real and what's not. And, if something's going to go viral, it's going to be a true something. You know what I'm saying? Not these fake scenarios that you're making up in a marketing executive's office. That's essentially just designed to try and trick people so that you can make more money. Anyway, I need to shut up because I'm starting to rant, and I could literally talk about, the short-sightedness, all goddamn day. I could talk about all the issues with the way these labels are going about things. But, hopefully to most people, it should be obvious. It should be obvious that, they're thinking short term, thinking about lining their pockets and not thinking about their artists, not thinking about the longevity of their artist's career, not thinking about their artists, just general mental health and well-being either, to be honest. So anyway, that was the situation with Halsey. She went super viral for that. Obviously the nature of how she went viral just was maybe a little bit of a conflict of interest. You know what I'm saying? She got on the internet, told the truth, said, this is what these labels are doing, because they're looking to manufacture viral moments. And that was a genuine moment that ended up going viral, but didn't make the brand look super good, did it? So obviously, eventually that led to a split. Eventually, Halsey did leave Capitol Records, and this is an article that came out in Variety that I would also recommend you reading. But I'll insert a couple of clips from the article into this video, just like highlighting some of the things that were said.
For Halsey, things reached a boiling point in May 2022, as they wrote that the song and a music video for it had been finished for more than a month, but claimed the label wouldn't go ahead with releasing the single unless they can fake a viral moment on TikTok. On May 31st of last year, Capitol used its socials to issue an open letter to Halsey, writing, "Halsey, we love you and are here to support you. We are committed to a release of So Good on June 9th. We are an artist-first company that encourages open dialogue. We have nothing but a desire to help each one of our artists succeed and hope that we can continue to have these critical conversations." The rest of the article is available via Variety. But this was the statement Halsey put out via Tumblr following the split, so you can draw your own conclusions about how those critical conversations went and how much of an artist-first approach was involved or not involved. It includes, "There were some restrictions I was under for a lot longer than it seemed, but they are no longer in the way. I'm sure you can fill in the blanks."
Obviously, based on what I was able to uncover about the whole Halsey situation, that led me to establish some opinions about, how Artist First this label was in practice, regardless of how Artist First they position themselves to be just in words. Definitely I formed some opinions based on whether or not I thought those words and actions were in alignment. And I also formed some opinions about what it seemed like their priorities were, particularly in regards to Halsey's statement about leaving the label, and upon leaving the label, her then being able to say, "I'm now not under restrictions that have been in place for a long time." That obviously led me to draw some conclusions about, the way this business was operating behind the scenes. I took those opinions and obviously channeled them into what I had seen of the Becky So Hot marketing, and started to apply them to that situation, to see what I could deduce about the Becky So Hot situation based on, kind of establishing a bit of a pattern or a bit of a, some evidence about, where this label's motivations and truly lied, and what their culture around marketing really was.
The Becky's So Hot era.
Okay, so to understand the Becky So Hot marketing, vital pieces of context that you need to know, pieces of homework that you need to have done, is first of all, you need to go watch Fletcher's interview on Call Her Daddy, which was filmed around the time of the Girl of My Dreams release, because it's vitally important, how she approached that interview to understand what I'm going to be talking about. The second thing you need to do is you need to go and watch the leader's music video called Somebody I Fucked Once. If you haven't already seen it, I'm assuming most people have seen that. That's a vital part of queer history at this point. That changed some things. But you definitely need to go watch that music video. And the third thing you need to go watch is you need to go watch part 2 of Fletcher's episodes on the X's and O's podcast in particular, because again, vital context about what was happening around that time is enclosed within that episode, and everything that I'm going to be talking about in this particular section of the video is going to make way, way, way more sense if you've seen all of those things. So go watch all of them now if you haven't already, and then come back. In this part of the video, I'm going to explain why I think the Becky So Hot storyline that was fed to the media is fake using receipts, and then I'm going to also explain what I think the truth is, again, using receipts. There were clues that the Becky So Hot storyline was fake in this Call Her Daddy episode, because if you watch back the episode and watch how Carrie answers the question of tell the story of how the song Becky So Hot came to be, you'll see that both before she starts answering the question and right when she finishes answering the question, she rolls her eyes. And I'm going to play the clip for you in a minute, and then slow it down, like where she rolls her eyes both at the start and at the end. But just know when people are rolling their eyes, generally that indicates some sort of form of like contempt or disgust, or like some sort of like passive aggressiveness, or like distaste of some kind. And, you know, like I think it's pretty safe to assume that those energies weren't being directed at Alex in this interview. And based on, you know, the way that she talks about, you know, Becky and Shannon in the interview, I think it's also safe to assume that she wasn't directing those feelings towards either of those people either. Personally, I think the contempt and disgust and kind of distaste for this particular little clip of the interview is directed at her label for making her lie when, you know, personally, I don't think she wants to. I don't think she wants to lie. I don't think she wants to peddle a fake story. And I think that's the reason why she rolls her eyes both before she starts answering the question and then once she finishes. But I'll play it for you now so you can see for yourself exactly her body language while she's answering this question.
Talk about the story behind the song.
Okay. Oh, it runs so deep, I don't even know where to begin. But the inspiration behind this specific song, Becky's So Hot, is I was in the studio and I was writing a different song at the time. But I started scrolling Instagram and I was creeping on my ex's new girlfriend. Obviously, like you gotta suss out the vibe.
Absolutely.
You gotta see what's going on.
Yeah, don't lie, everyone. You've done it.
You've done it. My mistake. I'm scrolling, I'm like creeping around. She posts a picture wearing an old vintage t-shirt of my ex's, and it's one that I've worn in the past as well. And I was like, oof, that stings. And then I'm like looking at the picture, I'm like, she's so hot. Like, she's literally so hot. And then I accidentally liked the picture on Instagram. And I did one of those, like, I threw my phone across the room and I was like, fuck. But also I was like, you know what? I'm going to own it. I'm not going to untap it. We're going to leave the like. We're going to commit to the fact that I was creeping. And then I was like, we're writing a song about how hot she looks in this vintage t-shirt. And then that's my song called Becky's So Hot.
The eye rolls slowed.
Okay. How hot she looks in this vintage t-shirt.
The other thing you might have noticed in that clip, which, you know, is the same across the board in terms of every interview I've ever personally watched Carrie give about the song Becky's So Hot, is that when she first starts telling the story, she breaks eye contact and is looking down as if she's trying to remember a script rather than, you know, generally people look up if they're trying to remember something that actually happened. But instead she's looking down as if remembering verbatim what she's supposed to say in order to set the scene. And she always sets the scene like the same way. She's always telling the story the same way, at least at the start. She's always setting the scene of like, I was in the studio, I was writing a different song at the time. Never says what the song was, by the way, never. But she words it almost verbatim the same time after time after time, which, you know, is just giving a little bit sus and rehearsed rather than like a genuine remembering, genuine reflection of something that genuinely happened. And this mostly just happens in the part where she's kind of setting the scene of herself being in the studio. That's the part that I definitely think is fake and fudged. And in a moment, I'll go through what I think actually happened, and which parts of, you know, this story that she's peddling I think are true and which parts I think have been embellished for the sake of her label wanting to get a more kind of like viral TikTok moment out of, you know, the song. Some of the other big red flags in the interview that, you know, there's some sort of like scheme or deception afoot is the big sigh before she starts speaking. So that can indicate stress, anxiety, or being exhausted by a situation. And she also starts rapidly blinking at the start as well. And perhaps the biggest red flag in this interview is that when she starts speaking about leaving the like, she actually makes a planting gesture. This is a planting gesture. She doesn't make a gesture that is consistent with what she is describing. So when we're describing leaving something, generally we'll make some sort of body language gesture like this. So moving the body away from something, not moving the body towards that thing. And, you know, when there's incongruencies between what someone's saying and what someone's acting out, that's usually big red flag that they're lying. So, you know, if I was watching this interview based on body language alone, I would hazard a guess that, you know, that planting gesture when she's saying, I left the like, is indicating that she did not leave the like at all. She actually planted the like, based on her label wanting a viral TikTok moment, and that being, you know, what she needed to give them in order for them to be satisfied that they would have a viral TikTok moment. And that would be, you know, kind of a good enough story to generate a bit of media and buzz around, you know, the song Becky's So Hot. So essentially the takeaways from this interview is that most likely Becky's So Hot was not written under the circumstances Carrie's describing in this interview. And also most likely that like was not accidentally left on Becky's Instagram. Most likely that like was actually planted in Becky's Instagram in order to generate a fake viral TikTok moment for the label. And if you want more proof that that's the case, you can go and watch the X's and O's podcast episode with Carrie and Shannon, because in it, Shannon actually brings up like, how the friggity frack was I walking sideways? And Carrie does clarify that it's made up. And I would hazard a guess that when she said it was made up, she meant the whole goddamn song. You know what I'm saying? Like, I bet you like any amount of money that what actually happened, that was the circumstances under which this song was written, was that Carrie heard from someone that Shannon and Becky were out and all over each other. And, you know, probably in the privacy of her own head in her own bedroom, she was probably letting her imagination run wild about what happened, you know, after they, you know, left wherever it was that they were spotted. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm sure she was imagining them doing things, canoodling. I'm sure she was imagining vintage t-shirts coming off. Like, I don't think she was seeing any of this happen. You know what I'm saying? I think this was all like a figment of that Piscean imagination. Look, I'm pretty confident that Carrie would have gone into the studio that Monday just with the intention of having some catharsis of all of the stress that she probably, you know, put herself in from like imagining things. And, you know, I think she might have needed to write that song to kind of like let it out, and to stop driving herself insane with like picturing things. I really, really, really doubt that, you know, the genesis of that song was like her being in the studio and stalking. I would hazard a guess that, you know, Becky So Hot was written from, you know, stress and anxiety, from her own imagination, rather than, you know, accidentally liking a picture. Especially because it would be such a fucking coincidence if that was the circumstances that was the genesis of the song, given that about 1 year previous to Becky So Hot dropping, Zelita released a music video called Somebody I Fucked Once, and in it, there just happens to be a scene where Zelita accidentally likes someone's Instagram and does the phone toss. Like, what are the odds that those two things just coincidentally would have happened? Personally, I think it is much, much, much more likely that Carrie wrote the song from her imagination, and then when her label was looking for a fake viral moment, the idea that they came up with was copying something that maybe they have seen before. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think it's a coincidence that 1 year previous to Becky So Hot coming out, there's this little scene in Somebody I Fucked Once, and then it just so happens that the story that Carrie's peddling to the media when Becky So Hot drops is almost verbatim exactly what happened in that clip. You know what I'm saying? Especially given that, you know, Shannon's obviously involved in the making of Somebody I Fucked Once. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just a little bit too much of a coincidence for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think I know where they got their idea from. And I don't think it was from something genuinely happening. I think it was from this music video. Plus, if you look at the lyrics of Becky So Hot, it does look like one of the lines has been changed in order to fit the fake storyline they're peddling, because in the first verse, a rhyming pattern is established where the first and third lines rhyme and the second and fourth lines rhyme. They're not a perfect rhyme, but essentially the mouth's making the same general kind of like movement and sound in each of these like paired lines. However, when you get to the next verse, instead of it following the same rhyming pattern where the first and third lines rhyme and the second and fourth lines rhyme, the pattern's been disrupted. So I think the first line was originally supposed to rhyme with wow in a similar way that mouth and now rhyme from the first verse. But yeah, the cropped one line, that's been changed. That wasn't there before, particularly because now the rhyming pattern in the second verse goes one and shotgun rhyme, the first and second, instead of the first and third. It seems like someone's gone in after the fact and couldn't think of a way to rhyme like a cropped one with wow, couldn't word it in a different way to try and make it about, the particular picture that ended up being, kind of the planted like. And so instead of the rhyming pattern being the same as the first verse, and instead of being able to think about a rhyme for wow, they just made the first and second line rhyme instead, because yeah, that's all they could do without disrupting most of the song. So yeah, like you look at Becky So Hot and you look at the rhyming patterns and it sure does look like someone's gone back into the song after the fact without trying to disrupt too much of the song and just changed one line to try and make it fit the fake storyline that was being peddled. Probably peddled and conceived of well after the song was written. Plus, the other big giveaway that this song was tampered with after the fact is the fact that the t-shirt in question, the crop t-shirt in question, doesn't even have a red Corvette on it. Like, I don't know what this is. This is some sort of cartoon red car, but this is not a red Corvette. And you can't tell me that Carrie, whose dad is a car man, doesn't know what a fucking red Corvette is. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think it is very obvious that the t-shirt in question, the t-shirt that inspired the song, the t-shirt that Carrie was imagining in her head was this t-shirt with the red Corvette on it that she's been photographed in, that Shannon has been photographed in, and that, unfortunately, Becky hasn't been photographed in because it was all a figment of Carrie's imagination. She was imagining it the whole time. It didn't actually happen. It's not real. And the song was obviously changed after the fact because there was a picture of Becky in this cropped t-shirt with the red fucking who knows what in the picture, and yeah, I would assume that Carrie probably didn't want to change the song too much to fit whatever the marketing strategy was that the label wanted. So I think she probably conceded and gave them that one line and changed the one line to make it about a cropped t-shirt, but I don't think she wanted to change the red Corvette line or any of the other lines in the song, and I think that's why the song doesn't really make sense. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't make sense if, the story that they're peddling is true in any case. It makes a lot of sense if the story that they're peddling is totally fake and made up for the sake of a viral moment on TikTok, because, if it's all lies, then it's all making a lot of sense. You know what I'm saying? If it's true, it doesn't make a lot of sense. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's the other big giveaway that, the song's, the song was already written before this marketing strategy was conceived, and, that after the fact, they devised this, strategy to create this viral TikTok moment and went back and changed the song and went back and planted a like in order to, generate more buzz by the sounds of it. I just feel like the math is mathin'. Especially because, in so many interviews, Carrie has said that, Becky So Hot almost didn't make the album. I really don't think she ever intended for this song to see the light of day. Personally, I think she wrote it for her own kind of catharsis. But then, I think her arm was maybe twisted a little bit to release the song, and to release the song with, an elaborate marketing scheme, because, there was an opportunity to make $1, and it turns out that multi-million-dollar companies are more slutty for $1 than anyone you'll find on the street. You know what I'm saying? Like, I believe her when she said, like, so many times over and over again that Becky So Hot nearly didn't make the album, nearly didn't see the light of day, and that she really didn't want to release it. But yeah, like, I think, there was probably some arm twisting behind the scenes to create, to not only put the song out, but then to also create a marketing campaign around it. That, based on Carrie's eye rolling when she tells the story, I don't think she vibed with. I don't think she vibed with the lying, and I don't think she vibed with, having to do something like that to please, the label. And I think that's the whole point of the reason why For Carrie exists as a song. Like, because in interviews, she's talked about the song and talked about how, she was angry. I wonder who the fuck she was angry at, you know what I'm saying? And she wasn't finding happiness in her career. And, like, she was having to jump through all these hoops to please all these people, like her label and management and whoever. Like, like when she talks about For Carrie, and when you really listen to For Carrie and think about, her talking about, I've pleased everyone and now this one's for me. Like, it just puts what was happening during the Girl of My Dreams marketing into perspective. Like, obviously, she was having to jump through hoops for people. Like, really, the only thing she gave herself on this entire album was this one song. You know what I'm saying? So, like, what is that saying? What is that saying about, the rest of the album? The rest of the album was, dictated by other people, essentially, by the sounds of things. It seems like, a lot was going on in order to generate $1. And yeah, I don't think Carrie had a whole lot to say, to be honest. And you know what? I would hazard a guess that the voice memo that Carrie and Shannon were talking about in this podcast, where they were basically talking about that in the peak of like the Becky So Hot drama, Carrie sent Shannon a voice memo talking about the situation. I would hazard a guess that probably in that voice memo somewhere, she probably would have been at least alluding to the fact that, she potentially had her arm twisted. I don't know if she would have been able to come out and say it. Like, I'm assuming she's like signed NDAs and things. I don't think she's ever going to be able to like come out and say exactly what went down with her current label behind the scenes. But, like, I just have a feeling that probably on that voice memo, there was some sort of, like confession of, kind of the position that she was in. And obviously, based on the way Shannon responded to that voice memo, like, you go watch the podcast episode to hear exactly what they say, because obviously I'm paraphrasing and it's so much better to just like hear it from their mouths. But yeah, Shannon didn't take, whatever it was that Carrie said all that well. And, in Shannon's narrative that, she was claiming in this, podcast episode, she was saying that, from where she stood, she perceived Carrie's intention as, wanting to get ahead in her career. Personally, I don't believe that that's true, especially given like everything that's happening with Finding Rewilding. Like, based on my experience with Carrie, like, I just would not ever believe that narrative, would not ever believe that she'd do something like to like get ahead in her career over like, people that she cares about. Like, personally, I don't buy into the narrative. I don't buy into the narrative that she's let all this stuff happen with her and I for the sake of getting ahead in her career, particularly given that, she's obviously been alluding to leaving her label, among other things. So like, while, I see where Shannon's coming from in terms of that's the way she was receiving it, and that's the narrative that, she was kind of in around the Becky So Hot drama, from where I'm standing, like, I first of all doubt that, that's true for Carrie. And second of all, I just have a feeling that even if that isn't the case for Carrie, I don't think she's ever going to be able to, say that explicitly. Which is why I think that, in the podcast episode, Carrie kind of like sat there and took what Shannon's narrative was. First of all, because, at the end of the day, like, Carrie's got to let Shannon have her narrative, and Shannon can make her narrative whatever she wants at the end of the day. Like, at the end of the day, each person's going to have their own truth. But yeah, I think the second reason why she kind of like let Shannon have that narrative and didn't kind of, say anything to refute it. Yeah, I have a feeling it's probably because she's not allowed to say anything to refute it. Like, I think really at the end of the day, she's going to have to own that, that's how it looks to people. It does look like Carrie made a decision to kind of get ahead in her career. Like hopefully, I think when all the Finding Rewilding stuff comes out and it turns out I've been telling the truth the whole time, hopefully it'll be really obvious to people that she, didn't, like withhold, the person that she loves from herself for the sake of getting ahead in her career, especially when she like leaves her label, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think hopefully then it'll be really obvious that, that's never been the case, not with me and nor with Shannon, you know what I'm saying? That, obviously she was doing things because she was legally bound by a like contract worth hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. And at the time with Shannon, like maybe didn't see a way out of it. Obviously, with my situation, it was a little bit different and there was a way out, which I think, a little bit I provided because, I got on the internet and said all this stuff that's happening is not because Carrie's a dick. It's because, she's signed to a label that has, particular priorities and motivations and, are looking to make a buck off her and my connection. Like, I get that the situation was different than that, and that's what allowed her to, kind of make different choices. But yeah, anyway, all this to say, like, hopefully when, the Finding Rewilding thing comes out, hopefully it'll be really obvious to people that, Carrie hasn't been doing things just to get ahead in her career and hasn't been throwing people under the bus, like, through her own choosing. It's been a bit of, kind of a tricky situation for her, to be honest. And yeah, like, I don't know if she's ever going to be able to say in explicit words exactly what went down with her label. I'm assuming there'll be NDAs involved. However, I hope that, based on this video and based on all the stuff that I've said, and just people, hopefully having a scrap of common sense, like, hopefully it'll be really clear, like, exactly what went down and, like, who's to blame, you know what I'm saying? Like, who's the major power that's, been twisting everyone's arms and calling most of the shots? But anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves. The point of this was to, essentially point out all the inconsistencies with the Becky So Hot marketing that was basically giving it away as a marketing strategy and not, in fact, actually what happened, or at least, broadly not what happened. Like, I think there were some small details that were true or close enough to the truth, that, it didn't feel like a huge, massive lie. Like, I'm sure Carrie did do some stalking in her time. I'm sure she did think Becky was hot, like, because Becky is hot. Like, who's to deny Becky's hotness? You know what I'm saying? I'm sure, like, there were bits and pieces of the truth woven in there, because I'm sure Carrie's trying to tell as much of the truth as possible. But yeah, there was obviously a lot of, scheming going on at the same time. And, I think there's a lot of evidence of where the schemes were scheming, that, should make it pretty apparent to people, hopefully, if we have, a scrap of media literacy, that, like, yes, this multi-million-dollar company that has a vested interest in making money was, doing things to make money. Yes, there was marketing involved. Yes, that involved lying and scheming and, doing all the things that you would expect a multi-million-dollar company to do, given, how ethical you would expect them to behave, given that they are a multi-million-dollar company. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the point. That's the point that I'm trying to make. Hopefully you see the holes, because I see them. I think they're glaringly obvious. I think it's very glaringly obvious exactly what this business is up to. And yeah, that was the point I was trying to make. Now we can move on to the Finding Rewilding business.
The original Finding Rewilding marketing strategy.
When it comes to the original marketing strategy for F2, which I think was originally going to be called Finding Rewilding, I would recommend going back and watching my second YouTube video in this whole Fletchy series, titled Forbidden Lovers, because in that video I went into so much detail about what I had gathered about the marketing strategy at the time and kind of what Carrie had seemed to have agreed to. And, you know, how I thought everything was going to play out. And based on how everything went down after I posted that video, I'm like much more confident that I was like extremely close. Like either I hit the nail on the head or I got extremely close to like what the original marketing strategy was based on, you know, kind of how things panned out afterwards. But yeah, basically, like I stand by everything I said in this original YouTube video and this Forbidden Lovers YouTube video in terms of, you know, what I had gathered about the original marketing strategy and what evidence I had to support, you know, my theory. So yeah, you should definitely go back and watch that for like an idea of what the original game plan was. And I think once I posted this, I threw a huge spanner in the works in terms of the trajectory that everything was going down. Like I think before I posted this, Carrie's label potentially had, you know, a lot of power in the situation. But I think once I posted this and exposed kind of like what the original marketing strategy was for F2, I think, you know, that created a situation where power could have maybe changed hands a little bit and, you know, Carrie could have ended up with way more power in the situation because obviously, you know, I think, you know, she agreed to the strategy. She did everything that she was supposed to do in terms of like whatever agreement was made at the start. But at the end of the day, because of what they were asking of her, they put her in a really shitty position. Like they really put her in a position to have her whole integrity like put on the line, to have her whole career put on the line. And, you know, like I think once the truth came out, that potentially gave Carrie a lot of power to like renegotiate some things and to have a say in the trajectory of like what would happen next now that they'd kind of messed up. You know what I'm saying? Like they'd really created a really shitty marketing strategy that was negatively affecting Carrie and I. And, you know, it was very clear that they didn't have my consent and, you know, most likely had coerced consent from Carrie, given that they were the power in the situation and had her in a legally binding contract worth hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. Like, I think once I posted that video, power maybe changed hands. And yeah, I think that put Carrie in a much better position to advocate for herself and, you know, like for things to play out at least a little bit differently. Like I still think that Carrie's under some restrictions, most likely from, management and just like, like trying to get everything to play out as best possible for her. Like I get that, you know, like the way things are now is, like still, you know, not complete freedom, but like I think it's probably much closer to it. And I think she has a lot more say. And I think that's only the case because I posted this video put her in a much better position to negotiate. I think once I posted this, I really allowed the bargaining power to change hands. Like I think that happens when you do speak truth to power. Like I think that, you know, kind of changed the situation, changed the trajectory of the situation, and allowed Carrie to have a lot more power and a lot more say in the situation, because obviously, you know, that gave her a really good, bargaining chip to negotiate her way out of her contract because obviously, based on the marketing strategy as it stood before I kind of made a video about it, she was being put in a position where, you know, it was her ass on the line, her integrity, like her career on the line. And I think, you know, based on me making this video, I think that would have given her a lot of power in the situation to kind of first of all, negotiate her way out of her contract with her label, like probably on the grounds of like negligence or something like that. And then also like gave her at least some say in the new marketing strategy. Like I'm assuming she wouldn't have got full control because I'm assuming there are people working with her behind the scenes, like a team of people that have probably been part of these negotiations in terms of Carrie leaving her current label. And trying to do that mindfully. And I'm sure there was some negotiation around what would be said publicly and how things would go down and like how to kind of manage the situation now that it was kind of a bit of a dumpster fire. You know what I'm saying? Like the situation, like is a little bit of a publicity nightmare. You know what I'm saying? Like, when you really think about it, I'm sure there was like a lot of discussion about how to handle the situation, you know, as mindfully as possible, and to make sure that, you know, everyone got out of it what they needed to get out of it. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, Carrie would have had a little bit more say in the situation based on, that change of like power, change of bargaining power, based on, you know, kind of speaking truth to power in this video. So that brings us to how I think the marketing was then changed to be, first of all, more mindful of like trying to navigate this like PR nightmare, but then also in light of her current label being kind of kicked off the marketing and having that original marketing strategy tossed out for good reason. It was now completely useless.
The new marketing strategy for the double album drop, In Search of the Antidote and Finding Rewilding.
So for this portion of the video, I do want to disclaim that I will be speculating what has gone on behind the scenes based on my absolute best guess, my best educated guess, based on, you know, kind of being involved in the situation and kind of little bits and pieces that I've seen kind of come to light. So yeah, this is going to be my best educated guess on what's been going on behind the scenes. So the first thing I want to talk about is what I think her current label would have requested of her when they were negotiating Carrie's way out of this like current contract that she's in. And I think they would have asked for two things. And I think, you know, they potentially would have been lucky to get these two things, but I think Carrie would have given it to them. And the first thing I think they would have requested was that she can't go like bad mouthing them around town. You know what I'm saying? Particularly given, you know, how everything went down with the whole Halsey situation. Like, they obviously did not look good coming out of that situation. So I'm assuming like probably their numero uno priority out of this situation was like making sure that, you know, Carrie left at least like publicly on good terms, so as not to kind of like damage the reputation of the label. Like, I'm assuming that's what they would have asked for first and foremost, because at the end of the day, they were in a position which frankly they put themselves in, to be made out to be very bad very easily in this situation. Because first of all, with the whole Becky So Hot situation, like, they really prioritized short-term marketing over Carrie's long-term career with that situation. Like, Carrie ended up being made out to be the villain online, which, you know, is obviously not good for her in terms of the longevity of her career, and particularly given that, you know, the whole reason why she was in that situation because she had her arm twisted by a multi-million-dollar company that had her under a legally binding contract. Like, they really kind of like put her in a really bad situation with that, and let her kind of like take the hit for like, you know, their motivations and like them wanting to kind of like make a dollar essentially. Like, that they really like exploited her and exploited her reputation and put her in a position to be made out to be the bad guy, all because they wanted to make a dollar and they wanted a viral TikTok moment. Another way they could have been made out to not look super good in the situation was that obviously they had gone looking for another gimmick again. They hadn't learned their lesson the first time and they looked for another gimmick. And to be fair, this time, I think they tried to think of a more love and light kind of gimmick to run, in terms of this play of like, you know, our artist is, you know, been secretly in love with someone and writing love songs about them. Like, I think that, you know, in theory is a more love and light, you know, marketing strategy. And, you know, probably at its inception, they might have thought that there was no way that could have made Carrie look bad or make them look bad. At the end of the day, because they were once again manufacturing a fake scenario in order to generate money to generate a viral moment so that they could make more money, exploit the situation. You know, like, that was obviously having a negative consequence on very real people. That was negatively affecting both me and Carrie, particularly because I hadn't consented to the situation, but I could see what was going on and I didn't, you know, enjoy being exploited. I didn't enjoy being used as a pawn for a marketing scheme from a multi-million-dollar company against my will. And I was like very vocal about that and like very actively fighting against being used like that. And, you know, like, at the end of the day, I don't know if they had Carrie's full consent either. By the looks of things, I think they had more of her coerced consent, given that, you know, once again, they're the power in the situation. They have her under a legally binding contract worth hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, that, you know, if legally enforced, can change the trajectory of her career. So yeah, like once again, they put themselves in a not very good position and could very easily be made out to be the bad guy in the situation, which, you know, again, I feel like it's their own goddamn fault for not learning their own goddamn lessons. But yeah, I think that's another thing that they probably would have wanted to avoid in this situation. And the third way that they had contributed to the situation in a way that, you know, definitely didn't make them look very good is that Carrie obviously ended up getting super, super, super sick. And now the thing about Lyme is that, you know, the main factor that causes Lyme flare-ups is emotional distress. And you cannot tell me that the emotional distress that Carrie endured as a result of the Becky So Hot marketing strategy and the original FindingxRewilding marketing strategy wasn't causing so much emotional distress in her that, you know, she ended up having a huge Lyme flare-up. And, you know, like, I'm not saying it's their fault that, you know, she originally got sick, but, you know, I'm just saying that the circumstances that she was put in, I think, was definitely contributing to her experiencing that Lyme flare-up. And I've gathered that Carrie potentially feels the same way, particularly given like what she said in interviews about the connection between, you know, your emotional well-being and your physical well-being, which I'll insert a clip of her talking about, you know, that connection between her healing, you know, underlying emotional issues and, you know, the physical symptoms associated with, you know, her actually being sick with Lyme.
And so it was this really beautiful process of just like looking at, you can't just look at the body and be like, you know, how do I mask this symptom? How do I mask the symptom? How do I mask the symptom? What's at the root?
Totally.
What's at the root, you know? And so the dis-ease in your body can manifest as disease. And of course, there's so many other aspects to it too. But that you can't look away from that piece of your emotional wellness in your, you know, it's all connected. It's all connected. The mind, body, spirit, soul. Like, we're just in these weird little meat suits being like, well, I don't know. We're like floating on a rock in the middle of outer space.
So weird.
Like, what the...
And I think that's also why when Carrie's been talking about Lyme publicly, she's been very, very, very clear that, you know, part of her like healing from Lyme has been about, you know, making sure she listens to her body, but also making sure she listens to her heart and soul. Like, it's all connected. I definitely think that, you know, her decision to walk away from her label is, you know, a big part of healing from Lyme, because obviously, like, this label has continued to put her in dangerous situations, not only like with her physical health, with her mental health and with her emotional health, but also like the longevity of her career, the longevity of her like dream of dreams. Because at the end of the day, like, Lyme has very real effects on the vocal cords. And so from her being put in a situation for the sake of their marketing that has ended up making her so emotionally distressed that she had a Lyme flare up, and then, you know, that started to affect her vocal cords, like, you know, like, because of that situation that her label put her in to make $1, like, literally everything got put on the line for her. Like, she was risking losing me. She was risking losing her voice. She was risking losing her dream. She was risking her reputation, her integrity. Like, literally, because of this multi-million-dollar company being slutty for $1 and not caring like what cost it, you know, has on their artists for, like, you know, for them to make $1 essentially, or anyone else in that artist's life, you know, like, they're putting Carrie in a really shitty position where she could have potentially lost everything. And so, yeah, I think, you know, her walking away from this label is a huge step towards her own, you know, healing, prioritizing herself, taking care of herself, taking care of her well-being, and basically saying that, you know, her own self-worth, her own health, her own, you know, like, heart, her love life, you know, like, all of it is way more important than, you know, this, you know, like, dream record label that, you know, let's say has, you know, some very questionable methods of operation. And, you know, from where I'm standing, doesn't feel very artist first. Let me tell you that just to begin with. Seems very like money and marketing at all costs first. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, let's not get on a rant, because I could really go down a rabbit hole with this, and I could keep yapping about this for sure. Like, I feel a way about it. Anyway, getting back on track. The other thing I think her label would have requested, other than, not bringing any of those things up or to light publicly to try and save their reputation, which I don't know is like a fair request, but I'm sure they requested it. I think the other thing that they would have been concerned about is like money. Obviously, they would have been concerned about money. They've been so concerned about fucking money. But essentially, like, what, to my understanding, what happens with, artists being signed to these labels is essentially these labels like front them like a whole bunch of money to like, undertake some sort of like creative project, and then they expect that money to be recouped as the album starts making money. And so I think that, obviously this label would have given Carrie like so much money to like start the project. And, essentially they were funding like all the songs that Carrie had already created, and, all the songs that Carrie still wanted to create for the album at the time all of this was going down. And so I can imagine the other request they would have made was to make sure that they got their money back. And essentially I think that's why part of the solution was to split the album into 2 albums, In Search of the Antidote and Finding Rewilding, because I think originally they were all going to be on the one album. But yeah, I think they wanted to split it into 2 albums so that they could use the first album to kind of recoup all the money that Carrie had already spent on the project, that they'd, obviously fronted her for the project, without, obviously profiting off Finding Rewilding, like profiting off our connection, because, they shouldn't get to profit off that because they created the scenario, so they shouldn't get to profit off it, particularly given, how much, kind of like pain and heartache that ended up causing both of us. So yeah, I think like a big part of the negotiation would have been making sure that there was a way for them to recoup their money, but without profiting off Finding Rewilding necessarily. And I think that's why the project got split into 2 albums, so that they could, get their money back essentially through the In Search of the Antidote sales. And then, yeah, Carrie could take all of her songs, move to another label, and then eventually profit off Finding Rewilding herself, rather than allowing the entity that created the scenario to profit off something that, never should have happened. Basically, that's how I think it all would have gone down. Like, I think, like her label probably would have, asked for money and reputation things to be considered for Carrie not to go around kind of, publicly, sharing maybe the truth. Like, I think, yeah, that whatever the public narrative ends up being, like, I think it'll be very tasteful and very much, kind of glazing over some of the, darker details of like what's gone on behind closed doors. But, I haven't signed an NDA, so I feel like I can say whatever I want as long as it's all alleged. This is all alleged. This is all speculation. I don't know anything. I'm just disclaiming. This is just my best guess on what was going on behind closed doors. Again, this is all alleged based on, my involvement in the situation and what I've, what I would hazard a guess was going on behind closed doors. Anyway, I think, those requests from her current label is probably a big reason why the current marketing strategy is going the way that it's going. I think it's, going this way to try and, like fulfill those needs. Like, I think, like, to be fair, I do think it's kind of fair for them to request the money. Like, I do see that side, even though, like, I would, personally love for them to have like maybe owned that they created the situation, and like maybe they should have taken the hit and maybe considered that, all the emotional damage that they incurred, like particularly to me, but also to Carrie, like who's fucking signed to them, like should have been enough of a reason for them to be like, okay, like, go, like, we'll consider this money like compensation for emotional damages and like risking your entire career by like damaging your vocal cords as a result of, the emotional distress that we created. At the end of the day, I understand that that's not realistic. I think that would be a very blue skies situation if, they had have, maybe just eaten the money, taken the loss. So yeah, I do kind of get them trying to like recoup their money because yeah, like, I don't know. I do see that as kind of fair. And then, yeah, like as far as their reputation goes, like, I don't know if it's totally fair for them to like, you know, I'm assuming there'll be NDAs involved. Like, I'm assuming there'll be some sort of like spin on the public narrative. Like, personally, I don't know if they deserve that. So, yeah, like, I'm going to just say what I'm going to say about it because, you know, like, I don't think that is really that fair for them to request at all. Anyway, I do think they would have requested it. And I do think, you know, like obviously Carrie has a different relationship to them than what I do. Like for me, it's much more like it's easier for me to be critical because it's much more personal to me and they haven't, you know, like done anything. They haven't done me a single fucking favor this whole time. You know what I'm saying? Like I feel like I have every right to be pissed off and to be very critical and to like, you know, not think that they deserve to like, you know, come out of this situation unscathed. But, you know, I can see that Carrie might have a different point of view and she might want to like, you know, leave with, you know, like giving them what I am assuming they would have requested. Like I'm assuming they would have requested, you know, some sort of like positive spin on, you know, the narrative around her leaving. And I assume they would have requested, you know, to make the money back. And, you know, I can't see Carrie denying them those things. Like, I think she's honestly too good of a person and much better of a person than I am. Because, yeah, I think, yeah, she would have, like, from the goodness of her heart, done that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think she would have honored, you know, that, like, while this situation has had a lot of dark and a lot of shitty stuff, like at the end of the day, like she's had a relationship with them for a long time. And as much as they've put her in very dangerous situations in terms of, you know, her physical health, mental health, emotional health, the longevity of her career, et cetera, like I think she probably, I would assume, sees the value that they've added at the same time. And I think, yeah, because she's not in the same position as me and maybe sees the good and the bad, yeah, I can imagine that she would, you know, honor those requests. And yeah, like I think this new marketing strategy was devised with the intent of like making sure that, you know, her label got those things. Essentially, I think that the exit strategy in terms of Carrie leaving her label, but also trying to fulfill the conditions that I'm assuming they would have requested, was essentially to split the album that they already had into two albums, the In Search of Antidote album and the Finding Rewilding album. And I think the only songs on the Antidote album that were actually written at the time that she split them up was potentially Maybe I Am and Ego Talking. Like I'm pretty sure she would have written Doing Better after she negotiated her way out of the contract to kind of like Easter egg that she would be leaving. I think Lead Me On was maybe written around the time that she was splitting them up, maybe Pretending, maybe Joyride, potentially all being written around the same time that she was leaving, because obviously those are kind of like agonized songs about, you know, me like not fucking with the marketing strategy for good reason. And then I think I'm pretty sure Crush was written like maybe around the same time as Lead Me On, Pretending and Joyride. I don't think Antidote was written till at least September. And yeah, and she might have had Errors of Us. I think she would have had Ego Talking, Errors of Us, and yeah, Maybe I Am. And I think those are the only three songs that she would have had for the In Search of Antidote album. I think she would have been basically like, after she split them up, I think most of the songs, the rest of the songs that were on the album would have been written after the fact, because basically I think the original album was like a very teeny tiny bit about her last connection and then mostly just love songs, based on, you know, what I had gathered about the marketing and, you know, what, you know, the album Finding Rewilding originally kind of should have been. Like it was basically going to be a whole like love song thing. So yeah, I think essentially that meant she had to basically like write a whole other album, like from that moment that they, you know, negotiated the parting ways, and, you know, flesh out more of the kind of like heartbreak to healing kind of pipeline storyline that's on the Antidote album, so that she could, you know, release the Finding Rewilding album like separately after the fact, after she'd already, you know, recouped all the money back to her label, so that she could make sure that, you know, they weren't profiting off the Finding Rewilding situation. And I think that's why in a recent interview, Carrie did talk about how she's like trying to write, love songs, like happy songs, healthy songs now. Because, I think that was the original, plan for Finding Rewilding for the album. Like, I think it was mostly going to be like kind of very positive love and light kind of, energy. But I think, when they decided to split the albums up, that kind of meant that she did need to kind of like maybe do a bit more of the classic Fletcher thing of like writing sad girl songs, mostly to like give the fans exactly what they are expecting from Carrie, and to like, figure out a way of like, maybe marketing this album, because I do think, Carrie probably wrote Two Things Can Be True very intentionally to like kind of mislead people to think that the song's about Kelsey Ballerini, so that, that could generate a bit of buzz about the album, so that, she could make sure she made enough money to like recoup the money that she borrowed from the label. And I think that's also why Eras of Us was chosen as the first lead single, because again, like people are expecting that's kind of like sad girl energy from Carrie. And yeah, I think that would have been another way that, they could have made sure that they recouped all the money of from the project by, kind of like releasing something that already in itself had a little bit of buzz around it, given that, so many people saw Carrie and Shannon reunite at the Eras tour. Like, yeah, I think like Eras of Us and Two Things Can Be True were like very, very, very intentionally written to make sure that, this album could, make money on its own. Like, I think they were like very intentional marketing decisions in terms of like being added to the album and being Eras of Us being used as a lead single to like, yeah, make sure that the label could be recouped for its money. And like, again, like very classic way for them to make their money back. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's, yeah, very classic of them to, like exploit connections. In this case, like Carrie's connection with Shannon and Carrie's connection with Kelsey, in order to, yeah, like market the album, make money off it. And it's just annoying that kind of like the end justifies the means a little bit, like they're kind of doing another classic thing to like make sure that they make money on the album. But again, like this time at least it's to make sure that, all the money gets recouped so Carrie can walk free. I feel like this is all just like very much giving industry BS. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like such classic industry moves. Like, it's so obvious that, Carrie and Kelsey are like obviously, still pals, and, these songs are definitely not about Kelsey, even though, I think Carrie was, making sure that people could like maybe like interpret that from the album so that, again, the album could make money. And yeah, like, yeah, again, it's just like very classic industry BS, like, and I get that they like need to make money on the album, but just at the same time, it does really bother me that, their like one move apparently is like exploiting everything. Cause like the part of the marketing that wasn't exploiting Carrie's connections, like with Shannon and with Kelsey, like the other part was exploiting the fact that she got sick. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the issue. And I'm not saying like you can't offer up like genuine pieces of like, like just genuine stories about your life in your marketing. Like I think you should center like your stories as, part of the marketing. But yeah, like I don't agree with the way they do it, like I think, like I kind of get the Lyme thing a little bit more. Like that's just like Carrie sharing her authentic experience of like getting sick and then, her road to healing and like what was involved in that kind of like path and that story. Like, I feel like that's kind of fine. But yeah, like it does bother me that they exploit people to make $1. And I get that they need to make $1 so that Carrie can walk free. Like it's just such a complicated situation. But yeah, like it's frustrating. But like, like what else would you expect, at the end of the day? Like, of course, this was going to be the way that it went. And at the end of the day, I'm just glad that there was like some sort of strategy involved to like, give everyone what they need in the situation so everyone can get what they want, which is freedom, ultimately, I feel. So yeah, anyway, I think Antidote was like very much created with the intent of like, settling Carrie's, debt with Capitol Records so that she could, walk free. Like that's, what I'm assuming was the ultimate strategy in terms of splitting the album into 2 albums, is like making sure that, she was able to give her label what they were requesting. And then, she would also have songs to walk away with to kind of like start out with the new label. So that she could, drop the Finding Rewilding bomb without allowing the entity that created the scenario that created the whole drama to begin with to profit off that. Because, it just would have been so shitty if after all this, they had have been profiting off us in the end, like if there was no way out of that. So I'm glad that she figured out a way out of that, like that she was able to split these albums in 2 so that, like they could get their money back, but not profit off us specifically. Like I get that they're kind of profiting off us just from the fact that like there was obviously ended up being songs about me on the album, and even some of the songs that weren't about me, I think, I could kind of pinpoint like what might have inspired them. So like, like it does bother me a little bit that, like I'm still being like a little bit exploited, but, at the same time, I'd rather them exploit me a little bit on the Antidote album than, like profit off, the big reveal when Finding Rewilding goes public. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think they should profit off that at all. I think that's like morally wrong. And so, like I get, why Carrie, split up the album and devised this strategy to try and keep everyone happy. Like I commend her for trying to keep everyone happy and trying to do what, is best for her at the same time. Like what a tricky situation to try and navigate. I do get that they were like obviously trying to give everyone what they wanted in the situation. And, at the end of the day, like I want her to be able to walk away. Like I want to like for her to, first of all be free, but also to have like rights to songs and like, to, like be able to set herself up for like what's the future going to look like, you know what I'm saying? And making sure that she's kind of set up so that, she can keep pursuing her dreams, like all of that, like totally want that for her. And, like support them doing whatever they had to do in the background to like make sure all of that happened. Because, obviously there was, while I personally don't think her label necessarily had a leg to stand on, at the end of the day, like they would have had a lot of rights in the situation to like music and stuff. So, I get like playing ball at the same time, you know what I'm saying? Because, I would never have wanted her to walk away from this situation not owning her music and not having the rights to her music or anything like that, which definitely could have happened. Like they needed to play this like real smart for sure. But yeah, like I think what was like hard about the situation was, like I think in the end I'm going to get what I want, which is like her, like that's all I want out of the situation really ultimately. But yeah, like I think, the situation, like the new marketing strategy and everything like that, like that was still hard for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think I still got pretty hurt in the situation. Like, I think I was getting hurt either way. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was getting hurt with the old strategy. I think I got hurt with the new strategy, especially because, like, I still to this day do not understand why I couldn't have got a heads up that, the strategy had changed. That, like what the previous plan in terms of everything, like, kind of coming out around my birthday in 2023, like, why that. Like, I feel like I should have got a heads up that had changed, even if I didn't know why at the time. Like, I think I would have figured it out. Because, yeah, that ended up obviously creating a whole situation, which I think I do need to, like, make a video about. Like, I need to make a follow-up video about kind of, like, everything that went down with the Errors of Us situation. Because, like, obviously Carrie and I did eventually kind of, like, resolve that fight through a couple of back and forths. And, yeah, I think, based on me bringing it to the public eye, I should probably bring it to the public eye, like how we resolved that. And yeah, some things that I think maybe were a little bit, like unfair of me to have said. Like I think if I had my time again, I would have said some things different. Obviously I understand where I was coming from in the situation because I was just like fucking blindsided. So yeah, if you do want to come back for that video, I would suggest subscribing so that you're around for the Errors of Us, how I'm doing follow-up. Yeah, like as much as, like obviously I want, the situation to like pan out really well for her. And I think the situation has panned out pretty good for her, aside from the fact that, like obviously we're still being kept apart, and we're being kept apart for a lot longer in order to make sure that, you know, a multi-million-dollar company doesn't profit off a situation that they created. Yeah, like it is hard. It's hard. It's like so hard to still be in this situation. And yeah, like to have, you know, gotten hurt from, yeah, again, getting pretty blindsided by how everything panned out. Like, I really thought when Carrie posted her videos of like leave the light on and like all that sort of stuff that, you know, the plan wouldn't have changed. You know what I'm saying? That she was still planning on, you know, like letting the cat out of the bag around my birthday last year. So definitely it was a huge shock to me when that didn't happen. And, you know, I would have loved a heads up, to be honest. I don't understand why I couldn't have got a heads up. Because Carrie finds other ways to communicate things to me, so I don't understand why I couldn't get a heads up about that. I don't know if that was part of the agreement or what. Like, that is the big question that I'm still, you know, kind of confused about. Like, that's the part that I don't understand. Like, you know, I don't know if it was like trying to make sure that, you know, I didn't say stuff publicly, which, you know, like I do kind of get because I do say a lot of stuff publicly, but, you know, if she had have asked me not to say something, I wouldn't have said it. You know what I'm saying? Like, so yeah, I kind of don't get that. I'm guessing it has something to do with like protecting, you know, finding rewilding so that it comes out at the right time. But yeah, at the same time, like, I don't know if I agree with that call. You know what I'm saying? To like extend the period of no talking. Now that I'm assuming, you know, like her label doesn't have a whole lot of say in the situation, unless they're like making the request for her to, yeah, still not talk to me so that, you know, it doesn't accidentally come out and they don't accidentally profit off it, because that would be bad. Yeah, like that's the part that I'm still confused about. Like why the continued, like no talking agreement. Like I just think it could have saved me definitely a lot of pain, and a lot of hurt and a lot of confusion and a lot of, you know, having to move through a lot of difficult feelings around the Errors of Us time, which again, subscribe. And I promise I will talk about that. I will talk more about that at some point on this channel. But yeah, like that's something I still to this day do not understand. It all just seems a little bit unnecessary. And, you know, like I don't have like a strong like certainty of like why that's the case. Like I obviously have suspicions that I've, you know, just outlined, but yeah, like I feel like I'm missing something for sure. Like I have to be missing something. There has to be some vital piece of information I'm missing, surely. Like it could just be the like, you know, making sure that, you know, the label doesn't profit off it. But yeah, at the same time, I'm just like, I don't know. Could we have been thinking about my mental and emotional well-being a little bit more somehow, please? Like, I'm confused why that wasn't a factor in the situation necessarily. Yeah, like, I don't know. But anyway, that's most of the situation. That's most of what I think was going on behind closed doors in terms of, you know, splitting up the album, like turning In Search of the Antidote into like maybe a bigger thing than what, you know, that part of the original single album was going to be, kind of fleshing it out a lot more, and why it exists as its own entity while Finding Rewilding is like, you know, coming later, which, you know, I will talk about. Like now that I have more time on this channel, I will do a full like deep dive into what I'm expecting to be on the Finding Rewilding album and all the lore and like all the clues that Carrie's left, that she's written songs about certain things. So if you want to subscribe, you can come back for that. At some point, I will make a video more about the second album, the Finding Rewilding album. But yeah, like that's most of the crux of what I think was going on behind the scenes in terms of like, you know, both the marketing and then also like, you know, negotiating Carrie's freedom. And yeah, again, this is all speculation based on, you know, what I've seen. And, you know, how things have kind of panned out and what things kind of seem like based on, you know, being involved in the situation and like having some, you know, kind of like vibes, particularly based on some of the things that Carrie and I have back and forth about. Obviously, I don't put everything that we kind of like clue each other in on the internet. So yeah, there's some things that I obviously know about this situation. And so, yeah, like this is basically all the gaps that I've been able to fill in personally about the situation based on, you know, things that Carrie's, you know, told me through our methods of communicating, which are quite creative. And then also like, based on how certain things have gone down and how things have panned out and that sort of thing. So this is like basically everything that I think was going on behind closed doors. I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to like confirm or deny, because I think by the time I find out what was going on behind closed doors, I don't know if I'm going to be bound to any like NDA, or like if I'm obviously going to want to protect Carrie, because, I know she will for sure be bound by NDA. So I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to explicitly say exactly what happened. But the thing is, I have worked out ways of like subtly communicating in my past 600 days of like going through all this. So, where there's a will, there's a way. I'm sure I'll like be able to at least allude to like whether or not I was right, which, if I'm as right this time as what I was last time, I think I'll be pretty right. And in any case, even if some of the details, like might be slightly different, I think at the end of the day, like the crux of like what I'm saying is like, you can take that to the bank, basically, is what I'm saying. I'm like fairly confident you can take it to the bank because, like we have established that this is what's going on in the music industry. Like we have that on good word, on good authority. This definitely looks like it was going on during the Becky So Hot era. Like there's so many clues that, what was going on in the Becky So Hot era was, for sure marketing. And then, we obviously, based on how everything panned out in terms of like, like me making the Forbidden Lovers video and, speculating around the marketing, and then all of a sudden there's a sudden switch up. Like, I think it's safe to assume that, I was probably pretty right about, what I was saying about the original marketing strategy, given that it obviously gave Carrie some leverage to, negotiate her way out of her contract and to, have some say in like changing the strategy. And like that's also like what the situation seems to be in terms of why the album's been split into 2 albums. It does seem to be like money related. It seems to be, with the intention of paying back the label so Carrie can walk free, and she can also, drop the FindingxRewilding bomb at the right moment so that, the multi-million-dollar company that created the scenario that we're in doesn't profit off, the scenario that we're in when, that all comes out, and it'll obviously create a lot of, talk. Like they definitely shouldn't be able to profit off that. So I think like the bones of the situation is like pretty spot on, regardless of, whether I'm missing some details, which, I'm sure I'm missing a few things. But I think for the most part, like, I think the crux of like what I've explained here is like, I think you can be pretty confident in it. Particularly like once everything comes out. Once everything comes out, like I think it'll be much more obvious that, all the things that I've been saying are probably close to, what the situation is. You know what I'm saying? Like, even if it's not 100% spot on everywhere, because obviously I'm like having to do some Nancy Drew detective work, and like, there's only so much Carrie can say to me with, our ways of like trying to back and forth with each other. Like I think, I'm sure I've gotten pretty damn close. And that's basically the crux of all the marketing as far as I'm aware. Since I have nothing else to add, really, like I think, I won't have anything else to add until I find out more information, until I get some things confirmed, which, I may or may not be able to like, let y'all know like what the situation turned out to be. Like I might be able to do that, or I might have to find a creative way around it or something. I don't know. Like that's that for now. I think that's all I have to say. So I think I'm going to leave the video here. Definitely if you haven't already, you should like and subscribe so that you can come back for more content, because I do have more stuff to say, like outside of like the marketing situation. Like there's definitely more videos that I want to make in terms of like predicting what's going to be on the FindingxRewilding album, also talking about kind of like what happened with the Errors of Us situation, and like how Carrie and I continued to back and forth until we kind of like resolved the conflict, and how she subtly let me know that she was still under some sort of contractual obligation to not talk to me. I'll put that in the video about the follow-up with Errors of Us, because obviously, when I made that you know, how I'm doing Errors of Us video, I was, you know, extremely concerned that, you know, the agreement in terms of her not being allowed to talk to me had been lifted and she was choosing not to. Since then, she's obviously made it clear that that's not the case and she's still under the same obligation. To this day, I don't know why, obviously, but yeah, I can at least, you know, talk through like the back and forths that we were having and, you know, how, we resolved that conflict and how she ended up soothing my fears that that was the case. Because, you know, turns out that wasn't the case. Turns out, you know, she wasn't free to just, you know, come here or talk to me, even though, you know, I had, you know, feared that that was the case and she was choosing not to at the time. So yeah, should definitely come back for that video because I'm sure there'll be a lot of tea in that one. And yeah, I think, you know, it'll be good to just like go through what I think's going to be on the Finding Rewilding album too. Because yeah, obviously I, with that album, I have a pretty good idea of what's going to be on it. I think the Antidote album kind of blindsided me a little bit just because, you know, yeah, it's kind of like not the vibe, you know what I'm saying? Like not kind of where we're at in the connection. I think Carrie was definitely going down memory lane to try and like flesh out, you know, a narrative there to like make sure that, you know, yeah, the album did well and did what it needed to do. But yeah, like I have a much better idea of what's on the Finding Rewilding album because Carrie definitely left me a lot of clues of like where she was pulling inspiration from for the songs. So I think the prediction video for that album will be much more accurate. Whereas I think, you know, I don't think Carrie really left me any clues about the Antidote album at all because I think, you know, the Antidote album was, you know, intended to be a surprise to, you know, settle her debts. Yeah, I don't think it was originally part of the plan, which is why, yeah, she hadn't really leaked anything to do with any of the songs or, yeah, like even the concept of Antidote really, yeah, like that album came as much more of a shock, because, yeah, I don't think it was originally part of the plan. I think it was very much, you know, kind of like a, like late stage kind of solution to a problem, more so than anything else. Like I think it, you know, the songs came from a very genuine place. Like I think Carrie was just genuinely writing like what was going on. I think at the time that, you know, she kind of split the album up, she was really in that healing place of like, you know, reflecting on her past based on, you know, our connection, particularly because like obviously when we started fighting because of the situation we were in, because there was like a multi-million-dollar company looking to profit off us, like a lot got triggered. Like, you know, I'm pretty sure Crush, Joyride, Pretending, Lead Me On was essentially all written from like a triggered place for like based on, you know, kind of what was going on in our connection and, you know, what that was bringing up from Carrie's past. So yeah, I think the songs are like all very genuine. And like a reflection of like genuinely what was going on because that was obviously a really hard time for both of us and probably Carrie's hardest time, I would assume, in the connection. So I'm sure she like had a lot of feelings that needed to be processed through the songs. But yeah, I think, yeah, it was like a bit of a curveball, the fact that, you know, first of all, she needed to write those songs just to process her feelings. And second of all, that, you know, they would end up creating like a new album almost. To, yeah, kind of be the prologue to the Finding Rewilding album that, you know, she was still planning on releasing. But anyway, like, let's not go down that tangent of like, yeah, like all the things that I think were happening around that time because there was a lot happening. And I think at some point I'd also like to, you know, have some sort of like public conversation with Carrie where she can kind of clarify, you know, exactly what she was going through once everything comes out and she's not trying to like avoid certain things to like avoid the truth coming out, which, you know, it kind of unfortunately has been the situation with her trying to promote the Antidote album. There's definitely been things that she's had to avoid just based on the situation, which, you know, I think maybe contributed to like one of the conspiracy theories that circulated about her, like when the album came out, because yeah, I think maybe she was giving a little bit of a sketch vibe, again, just to try and cover up the fact that, you know, there was another album coming out and she couldn't fully like explain, I think, you know, the, you know, genesis of a lot of the Antidote songs because, you know, like a lot of them are tied to me in some way in terms of like, you know, I think situations were coming up with us that were like triggering stuff from her past and like making her, you know, like reprocess a lot of stuff and heal stuff, and just feel lots of feelings. I think, she was maybe not able to like fully express like exactly how deep the lore of the Antidote album runs, just based on, obviously needing to keep things under wraps. And, I'm sure people picked up on that vibe, that she was kind of like leaving stuff out and like not giving the whole truth. Hence, a rumor that circulated around her around the time of the album release. But yeah, like I think at some point it would be good to have like a conversation with her and like talk way more deeply about all the songs on Antidote and all the songs on Finding Rewilding and our whole journey with this whole thing. Like, I think, it'd be nice to talk about it publicly just for the sake of like sharing the story. And also the fact that I've like obviously shared a lot, and a lot of the time I'm just like speculating on a lot of things and just like assuming things about what's going on for her and just like guessing and like making a educated guess a lot of the time. So I think it would be good if we could, have some sort of conversation at some point, kind of clearing things up and making sure that she gets an opportunity to have more of a personal narrative, and clarify things that haven't been clarified, and et cetera, et cetera. Like, I do want to do that at some point as well. And I don't know if it'll be on this channel or if it'll be, in some other format. But yeah, like, I think, we need to talk at some point, I think, publicly about, our whole journey. Yeah, I think I would like for there to be some conversation somewhere where, like we go through, this is the story as it is sacred and true for us. This is like actually what we're experiencing, and like a lot of the things that we were like maybe learning, particularly from 2020 hindsight, because obviously a lot of things, as, things have unfolded in this situation, like things have like changed their like meaning. For me personally, like I look back now and obviously have different views on certain things that have happened. Like, for example, the Errors of Us thing, like I obviously see that totally differently now. And I think it would be good to go back with like 2020 hindsight and kind of like tell the story again. Explain all the stuff that we've, been through and uncovered, and, all the ways that we've grown, because it's definitely been a huge growth experience for both of us, I feel. Like I know for myself, like, this has been one of the craziest years of growth, 600 days of growth in my entire life. Like, it feels like this situation was, while set up by a, multi-million-dollar company, like that stood to make a buck, at the same time, like, I think two things can be true. And the other side of it is that, I think, potentially there was a very spiritual kind of like side of this situation, a very spiritual plan, in terms of, me basically having to re-experience like all the pain from my past all over again. Like, this situation was just like the perfect storm of like circumstance that bring up like all of my stuff to like basically like heal and alchemize it. And, just from where I'm standing, I can kind of see where, this situation might have triggered Carrie to do something similar as well. I think that would be really good to talk about at some point, because it has been a like actually wild journey, like so wild. Like, as much as I don't agree morally with the fact that this situation even exists, like I got so much out of it, and I think it would be like very healing to have a conversation of like everything I got out of it, and then also to, have a conversation about all the like ups and downs and hardships, and, how I was affected by the, situation as it was set up, and, kind of what happened as a result of that situation, like the good, the bad, the ugly. Like, I don't know. I think it would be, just healing personally for me, but also, like, I think it would be good kind of like to just clarify some stuff. This turned into a lot of tangents of me trying to wrap up the video, but yeah, I think now I'm finally done. So until I see you again, like, hopefully for one of these many conversations that I've mentioned that just need to happen. Ciao.